Hello, everyone. Welcome to this wonderful Sunday morning. Glad that you could come on and join me. It's actually raining right now, and we had the hour forward, that spring hour forward. So that was always a fun adjustment. I came down this morning at 6, and my clock said 5, and I thought I woke up an hour early, and then I remembered that the clocks moved forward. So it's always a fun day with it being darker in the morning longer, but later at night, it's going to be nice when it's sunnier out later. We're getting to that time of year where the light's getting longer and longer. So that is great for our health and well-being. So welcome to the Wealthy Wellbeing Podcast. This is episode number 5. I will give some tips and some tricks and some information on ways to help create a healthier lifestyle and that produces a happier life and a healthier life without requiring significant restrictions so you can enjoy your life and not feel super constrained to try to achieve those health and fitness goals. We can balance between both of those. I am your host, Zach Bush. I will be taking you through this journey. And today, in episode 5, we're going to talk about macros and portion control. So we're going to understand the different macros, proteins, carbs, and fats. And we're going to talk about what they do, what their role is, what sources we can get them from, and how much do we need of each one. We'll talk about portion control, and we will talk about how to balance those macros in those portions for each one of our meals. If you haven't yet, go on and subscribe to my Spotify channel, my YouTube channel. You can watch all of the recordings on YouTube. You can listen to all the recordings on Spotify. If you know anybody that's looking for a podcast like this, go ahead and send it over to them. But otherwise, let's get started. We're going to talk about proteins first. So super important, especially if you live an active lifestyle. They are going to be the rebuilding blocks, the rebuilding fuel that you need to continue to recover, right? So what does protein do? They help with the growth and repair of muscles and tissues and organs, and they play a crucial role in hormone production, immune function, and also the transportation of nutrients. But more importantly, they provide the amino acids that your body needs to rebuild the muscles and other cell functions. Right? You always see the bodybuilders worried about the protein, eating their steak and their 7 pounds of chicken a day. That's because they're working out hard and they need to get that protein back into the muscles so it doesn't eat away more muscle to help fuel or eat away anything else that it shouldn't be, right? We want to refuel ourselves right after. So the protein is going to be super important before and after workouts and just in general throughout the day to help rebuild that muscle. Right. Also, it promotes satiety. Basically, it helps you feel full and feel full longer. It makes you your stomach work harder to process that, which helps burn calories as well. But most importantly, it makes you feel full, which will help in weight management because if you eat protein and you feel full, you'll eat less of the other things that you shouldn't be eating. All right. So, that's all great. How much do I need to eat? And in most of these, it's going to vary depending on your activity level and, your age, your gender, and all that stuff. And even from person to person who might have the same activity level, same age, same gender, just depending on that hormone and the metabolic capacity of that person might change it, right? In general, most Americans are not deficient in it. We get protein in lots of different places, but that doesn't mean we have enough that we need. So usually what I tell people to start with is anywhere from 3/4 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So for somebody that is 200 pounds, that is 200 grams of protein, maybe 150 to 200 grams of protein, right? So it can vary. And again, it'll depend on that activity level. The more active you are, the more you will want, right? And if you feel like you're hungry more often, increasing that protein amount will also help decrease that hunger and help you stay full longer, right? And in addition to if you're working hard when it comes to training, right? If you're injured or sick, your body is on high production of trying to fix itself, trying to mend itself, trying to recover, right? So we want to increase that protein to help along with that process as well. So it's not just, hey, you're working hard, you're training, but also you're sick or you're injured, your body wants to recover, right? That protein will be a part of that. In addition, right, protein is 4 calories per gram. We'll talk about the other ones, the carbs and the fats later, but 4 calories per gram, just to give you an idea. So that will help when it comes to portion control and setting up your meals later. So where can we get protein? I think most of us have an idea, but if not, lots of lean meats are good. Chicken is one of the best because it's very, very low in fat, and I should specify chicken breasts. They're very low in fat. They have high protein, so you're not getting that ton of calorically dense fat as a part of it. Lean red meat is also good. Get anything 80%, preferably 90% or higher. Again, because it's just lower on the fat and just more concentrated protein and not a mixture of all the other macros. And then turkey is another great one. Just like chicken, it's got a lower fat content. It's got high protein content. So those lean ground meats and then the chicken breasts are typically your most common proteins that you're going to get. If you're vegetarian, tofu and tempeh are really good. They are, usually used in the substitutes, the plant-based substitutes, but they're high in protein. They don't have a ton of carbs. And again, they will make you feel full for longer, which is what we want. So moving on to the next one, we have carbs. Just like protein, 4 calories per gram. So they're both the same, but carbs are your fuel source. If you saw my live or listened to my podcast from Wednesday, a few days ago, we talked about fueling for performance, which concentrated on we want to have more protein and more carbs before and after our workouts to help fuel, to help recover. But then carbs will also help us fuel our muscles, and they help fuel our brain and our organs. So what proteins build, carbs will also fuel. Carbs are broken down typically into simple and complex carbs, where simple is kind of those sugary carbs, and complex are the starchy carbs and fibers. So simple ones, while serve a purpose, right? And they're not necessarily like candy, right? They can be fruits and stuff like that. They have the sugars in them. They're easier to break down. But the complex carbs will break down slower, release slower, but still serve a purpose in providing that energy. One thing that is associated with carbs is that, they're super negative, right? Everybody thinks that carbs are going to get you fat. And that's not necessarily the case, right? 4 grams or 4 calories per gram. So the same as protein. The problem is with carbs is they don't, depending on which types you have, they don't make you feel as full. So if you do have a lot of fruit, right, they will digest a little bit quicker, and maybe you don't feel as full as if you had a bunch of potatoes, right? So it's easy to overeat, especially when you start going into breads and pastas. They're very carb dense. So there's a lot of calories in a small amount of carbs, right? So it's easier to overeat those, and therefore that's why people think that they make you fat, which isn't necessarily the case. When it comes to carbs too, we talk about glycemic index, where high glycemic index, it spikes your blood sugar, which can be from the fruits, but typically it's from the candy and all that. And because it spikes it, it makes your body produce insulin and get rid of it. It's thought of as bad. While the low GI stuff digests a lot slower and doesn't rise that blood sugar as quickly, but we still get those sugars and fuel that we need. So people think that, like, all right, if it's a low glycemic index food, that's what we want to only focus on because we don't want to keep spiking that blood sugar. Well, the glycemic index was set out based on just whatever they were testing and how much 50 grams of that spiked the blood. But when do we ever just eat the carbs, right? It's usually mixed in with different stuff. So you'll see different effects based on what you're eating with it. So don't only focus on the low GI stuff. The high GI stuff's fine. We just want to mix, but we want to primarily focus on those whole foods, right? The fruits over, the processed sugar, and then the starchy carbs as well to slow that digestion down. And if we do have those breads, the tortillas, or anything like that, like try to go whole grain as much as possible because that fiber will help slow down digestion process, help us make us feel a little bit fuller, give us more time to process that we are full. So carbs are super important when it comes to activity level, right? The fuel for performance talk that I did a few days ago, we want to make sure we're fueling those carbs around our workouts. and a little bit less away. We want to eat them throughout the day, but if we have more carbs around our workouts, that'll be better. Our body's more prepared to receive those carbs, digest them quickly, and not store them as fat long term. So, how much do you need? Just like protein, it depends on your activity level. Carbs more so than protein because they are fueling that activity, right? So, a 25-year-old male who weightlifts 2 times a day is going to need a significantly different amount of carbs than a 60-year-old woman who does yoga 3 times a week, right? Not that one's better than the other, but the amount of fuel that you're going to need to do it consume is going to be significantly different, right? Men typically digest food a lot quicker, especially somebody who's active consistently and has a large muscle mass. If you have a larger muscle mass, you need more fuel to fuel all of the muscles. So it depends, again, on the activity level. It's something that you can play with, but mainly what we want to focus on are the complex carbs and getting a mixture of those sources. So we get some potatoes, we get some fruits, we can get some bread in there. Again, just make it whole grain. And, um, quinoa is also good with some of those oats as well. And again, 4 calories per gram. So the same amount of calories per weight as protein. So we've gone through the first two. Now we can go into fats. So fats deal with hormone production and balance. They work on cell membrane development. They also help form brain nervous system. They have fat soluble vitamins, and they're very energy dense. Where protein and carbs were 4 calories per gram, fats are 9 calories per gram. So very easy to have a small amount of fats, but have a lot of calories in them. And those fats are broken down into a few types. We have the saturated fats, we have unsaturated fats, and we have the trans fats. The saturated fats are solid at room temperature. So think, fat on the steak. And they're a natural saturation, unlike the trans fat, which are a processed fat, which are fats that we really want to avoid as much as possible. And then unsaturated fats are the ones that we want. They are liquid at room temperature. These are your olive oils and your avocado oils. So those are the oils that we want. Again, we want to make sure, because they're so calorically dense, that we don't overuse those, because it's very easy for a little bit to make a big difference in the calories that we're eating. So what do they do? What is their role? They support brain function, right? We get omega-3s from them, especially if you have fish. We want those omega-3s, so they help with brain health, and then they can promote cardiovascular health as long as we don't go overboard with how much we're having. So where do we get our fats? We get them from avocados, we get them from nuts, fish, especially fatty fish like sardines and salmon, and then plant oils, like I mentioned, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, and then we can get them from those nut butters. So fats are one of the reasons that it's super easy to gain a lot of weight, because everything is fried nowadays, especially if you eat out a lot. Like, everything is cooked in a lot of fat. So while you might have a chicken breast that might be grilled in fat, right? So we had a lot of protein. We're making good choices there. But if we're eating out, it could have been cooked in a lot of fat, right? And that fat will get into the chicken, and therefore we'll eat way more than we think we do. So very easy to find the fat. So making it very easy to overeat on that fat. So we talked about the main macros. Before we get into the portion control and how do we make our plate, we should talk about vegetables, because those are going to be a big part of it. So a study was done, and less than 10% of the country gets the 2 to 3 cups of veggies a day that they should be, right? Less than 10% for 2 to 3 cups. And 50 to 60% don't even get 1 serving of vegetables. So very significantly low numbers that would be helpful to get up if possible, right? So they're very easily skipped over. They don't typically have a lot of taste to them if you don't prepare them right. So not everybody enjoys to eat vegetables. What they do is they give you micronutrients. So you get lots of good vitamins, vitamin K, you get potassium, you get calcium from them. But in addition, they help fill you up. So you get the volume of food with very limited amount of calories. So again, trying to fill ourselves up, getting a nice breakdown of different foods without getting anything too calorically dense, which is typically what happens when we come to making our plate, making our portions controls. So let's lay that out. What does that look like? So 1 cup of carrots is 53 calories. The same 53 calories is in 1 Oreo cookie. Now, if you eat a cup of carrots, I would find it hard to believe that you weren't at least somewhat full. I mean, then you go to a cookie, especially an Oreo. When have you ever eaten just 1 Oreo, right? It's like 1 sleeve of Oreos. Then maybe you're starting to feel full. Maybe it's sick to your stomach. So it just goes to show you, right, the volume of vegetables that you can have compared to something else that's processed with high fat, high carbs. All right. So now we have our proteins, our carbs, our fats, our 3 macros. We have our veggies. How do we balance that out? How do we set our plates up for each one of our meals to get a good balance and to not overeat any one of them in general? So, one option is the weigh and measure. Now, that's not typically something I would jump into right away with anybody, especially if you don't have foundational habits already built up. You're not already eating enough vegetables, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough water, you're not exercising enough. So, if you don't have that foundation, weighing and measuring is just going to be way too overwhelming and probably not super helpful in general. The problem with weighing and measuring, it's super time consuming because you have to sit there and cook everything and then literally weigh it and put it into MyFitnessPal or whatever app you're going to use to figure out how much you need to get 30 grams of protein and 30 grams of carbs and 15 grams of fat for your one meal. So you have to sit there and weigh it out. And there's apps that help with that, but it's still super time consuming just for one meal. And then to do that for 3 or 4 meals a day, 5 days a week, whatever that looks like, it just gets super time consuming. Again, it's a lot of work and can be super overwhelming for somebody who's just trying to start into it. So not usually where I would dive into some helping somebody or coaching somebody at first. And like I said, it won't matter in the long run if you don't have those foundational habits. However, the weighing and measuring for somebody who's really trying to dial things in, maybe you're an athlete and you're preparing for an event, that's going to be the best way to really dial things in, making sure you're getting enough fuel for the activity or event that you're working on. And if you're trying to cut weight or gain muscle mass, that's the best way to track the progress. What's working, what's not working, how is it changing your body composition, right? If you're not measuring, you can't adjust to it. So while it's not for most people, it can be super beneficial if you do have those foundational habits and if you're targeting on working towards something. Okay. So, all right, we won't talk about counting, weighing, and measuring macros, right? So, what can we do? There's 2 ways we can do it without weighing and measuring. And it's super helpful to do this as well because it gives us an idea of how we can proportion stuff. And also, it helps us if we do go out to eat. So, I'll touch on that. So, plate method is one way to do it. So, you have your typical dinner plate, right? Don't go anything oversized to try to cheat the system. But we want that plate to be about half full with vegetables. And just like I talked before, most people don't get enough vegetables. They help you feel full. They give you all the nice micronutrients, especially if you're getting all of the different colors, whether it's in one meal or across different meals throughout the week. The different colors give you different micronutrients. So that'll help make us feel full without adding a lot of calories. And it will help get us the micronutrients that we need. So half of the plate is the veggies. A quarter of the plate is our protein. So our chicken, our fish, or our lean meat. And again, that will allow us to rebuild from whatever activity we're doing, rebuild the muscles. And then the other quarter of plate is going to be our carbs, right? Our starchy carbs, potatoes, whole grains, and those are going to help fuel us. And that's how we want every meal to look. 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, whatever it is. Start with something. If 3 meals is what you're used to, start with that and feel how that works for you, whether it's making you feel full or if you're losing weight, gaining weight, or just how do you feel in general. Starting at that point will be a good way to get an idea of how much to eat each time you have a meal. And then again, like I said, if you go out to dinner, you can take whatever plate they give you and try to do your own little plate method. Sometimes you might even need to see if you can get a to-go box like right away, get your plate method set up, put it the rest of it to the side and save it for another meal or another day, right? Typically, you'll eat whatever's on your plate. So if it's way more than you need, you will want to get it out of sight, out of mind, and practice that plate method. You can also add in a side of fruit there as well. Get those simple sugars in, but those good simple whole sugars as well. So that's one way, the plate method. The other way is using hand portions. So very similar. Our hands are typically proportional to our body, so and how much we need. So you can go with those hand portions if you don't have a plate. For example, if you have a meal prep container that has the 3 or maybe 4 compartments, you can use those hand portions, hand guides to put them into that meal prep container. So what are the hand portions? We have our palm size is just our protein, and that's about 20 to 30 grams of protein. Then we have our full fist is going to be our veggie portion, right? It's about a cup of vegetables. So you'll grab your palm, you put your protein in there, you grab your fist amount of veggies, you put it in the container or on your plate if that's how you want to do it as well. And then you have a cupped hand, right? So, again, try to imagine you don't have to physically, scoop out a bunch of potatoes or rice or anything like that, but about a cupped hand of carbs, and you put that on your plate, and then about a thumb's worth of fat, right? If you cooked the protein with fat, probably don't need it. But if you're having like an avocado or a bunch of nuts or anything like that, just a thumb's amount is all you're going to want. That's about 7 to 12 grams of fat. Whereas the palm is 20 to 30 of protein, and then the cupped hand is about 20 to 30 of carbs. So try both of them. Maybe use the hand portions to put it on your plate and see how they compare. And again, that's just a starting point. If you do 4 meals a day of the hand portions and go through the whole day doing that, 2 of each of those, so 2 palms, 2 fists, 2 cupped hands, and 2 thumbs of fat for men and 1 each for women for each meal, 4 meals a day will be about 3,000 calories for men, which is a decent amount, and then 1,500 calories for women. So start somewhere and see how your body responds to it, whether you feel too full, not full enough, you're gaining weight, losing weight, whatever it is, have a starting point that you can measure, and then we can adjust as we go. So another thing with, eating, making sure that we're not rushing when we eat and not eating until we're bursting from the seams. Eat to about 80%. And if you finish your plate based on the hand portions and you still feel hungry, wait 10 or 15 minutes to give your brain time to catch up and tell you whether or not you're full. So that will help because a lot of times we're jumping right to get the seconds, and then you get sit down and you have a couple bites in and you're full, but you're like, I got this plate, let me just eat whatever's left, and then you end up overeating. So that's a good way to kind of ease into it and to kind of be more mindful when we eat so we don't overeat. So we talked about hand portions, we'll talk about meal prep in another episode, but cooking in bulk, cooking the separate proteins, cooking the carbs separate, and cooking the veggies separate will help when it comes to putting our meals together, having that already ready to go, and then we just have to portion it out. Another thing you could do is get the pre-cooked meals, like trifecta meals will be delivered. If you have a local one, like around here, we have Performance Meal Prep, you can order it and it'll get delivered by a certain day, and then you just go and pick it up from the gym. So they're already prepped, then you just microwave it. They're usually balanced pretty well with what you need. So if you're having trouble in general or just having trouble with one meal, you can use those to help you get those proper portions, get that macro balance in. And protein, we want to spread throughout the day. Don't rely on protein shakes to get the protein that you need, because typically it's whey protein. It digests quick. It won't help you feel full. So what you'll do is you'll get the protein, which is great, but then you'll end up eating something else, and because you're not hungry, and then you're going to overeat and it's going to add on pretty quickly. So I typically try to keep a protein shake for if I'm working out. And then if you struggle to get it elsewhere, I wouldn't do any more than one more serving somewhere else, right? Whether that is in your smoothie in the morning or, something at night. Just don't overdo the protein powder, the protein shakes, just to get that protein in. Also, in addition, the veggies, if you struggle to get that or can't do half the plate as at each meal, you could supplement with the powdered green supplements. They will at least help get the micronutrients that you need. Again, they won't fill that volume or make you feel as full as you should or want to avoid overeating, but it'll at least give you the micronutrients that you need. And then whenever it comes to meal prepping, meal planning, getting the right proportions, the right size down for our meals, planning ahead is going to be key. And again, I have probably a couple episodes of meal prep coming up to help with that. That's the most common thing is I don't know what to prep. I don't know how to prep. I don't like cooking, so I'm putting together something that will lay everything out for you and make it as easy as possible. You still have to do all the cooking, but there's some tips in there to help make it more efficient and make it easier, right? We want to avoid as much resistance as possible. So if we can make it easy, make it doable, then people are more likely to do it and more likely to see results. So, key takeaways for today, we have the 3 macros: proteins, which build our muscles, help us recover. We have our carbs, which provide us energy. And then we have our fats, which help with hormone balance, building, nervous system, and they're very energy dense. So, using those 3 macros in addition to our veggies, we can build out our plate, build out our meals, hopefully plan them out even just a day ahead of time will be super helpful. Now you don't have to think about it. Just pop it in the microwave, heat it up. It's ready to go. So, action item, I always want to make sure we leave with an action item. So, try just one day or even one meal of that plate method and see how full you feel. See how you feel the rest of the day. Don't try to go overboard. Don't try to do all 3 meals 7 days a week. Might be a little much, especially if you're not doing that now. But again, sit down, plan just one day. What can you do? What's that plate going to look like? Is it going to be chicken with potatoes and like a mixed frozen veggie that you steamed? That would be perfect. Start with that. See how you feel. Write down what you did, how you felt, and slowly try to increase the number of days a week that you do one of those meals or the number of meals you do in one day. So maybe you start one meal 3 days a week, and then you go one meal 4 days a week, and then maybe you go 2 meals, 2 days a week and 2 days, 1 meal a week, right? Mess around with it, but slowly start increasing it as you get more comfortable meal prepping and balancing the portions and understand how much of each macro you need to help you feel full or lose weight or whatever you're looking for. And as usual, if you need any help with any of this, you have any questions, you know anybody that would find help from this, let me know, send them this information. You can DM me on Facebook, you can DM me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to help with anything and everything when it comes to health, fitness, nutrition, all of that. I'm just here to help. So I appreciate everybody jumping in. Hope you got something out of this and have a great rest of your day.